Most accounts of Reinhard Heydrich begin with the horror he engineered. But you know, a more useful starting point is a mismatch. A tall, blonde, violin-playing intellectual who also happened to be a ruthless killer. The misconception is that he was a monster from birth. In truth, Heydrich spent his early 20s drifting, dismissed from the Navy for a broken engagement rumor, then unemployed, then a low-level intelligence clerk. What turned him wasn't ideology alone. It was a very human need, the desperate desire to prove himself after failure. By the end of 1934, at just 30 years old, he would run the entire Nazi secret police network. The overlooked consequence of that rise? Heydrich systematically transformed policing from a legal restraint into a weapon of pure power. That blueprint outlived the Third Reich and influenced authoritarian tactics for decades. When Heydrich joined the SS in 1931, Heinrich Himmler was looking for someone to build an intelligence service from scratch. Heydrich had no spy training. What he had was an orderly mind and a complete lack of sentimentality. Within 2 years, he created the SD, the Sicherheitsdienst, by recruiting university graduates and former officers, not street brawlers. He insisted on typed reports, cross-referenced files, and statistical analysis. This bureaucratic approach made him more dangerous than any street-fighting thug. He understood that terror works best when it feels administrative. One overlooked decision came in 1934, during the Night of the Long Knives. Hitler needed to eliminate Ernst Röhm and the SA leadership. Heydrich supplied the fake evidence and the arrest lists, but he also did something quiet and lasting. He persuaded Hitler that the SS should operate outside civilian court jurisdiction. That single legal exemption became the foundation for every later atrocity. No judge could review an SS arrest. No lawyer could demand evidence. From that point, the rule of law in Germany existed only as a facade. Heydrich then turned his attention to the Gestapo. When he took over in 1936, the Gestapo was relatively small, about 7,000 officers for the entire country. He didn't dramatically increase the staff. Instead, he created a culture of denunciation. Ordinary Germans were encouraged to report neighbors for suspicious comments. By 1939, 80% of Gestapo cases began with a tip from a citizen, not a police investigation. This was efficient and cheap. It also turned society against itself more effectively than any occupation army could. Heydrich's human limit was not cruelty, but exhaustion. He worked 16-hour days, chain smoking, sleeping little, and, constantly refining his systems. His wife recalled that he rarely spoke of work at home, not out of secrecy, but because he found it tedious to explain. When the war began, Heydrich organized the Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing units that followed the army into Poland. But here again, the overlooked detail is the paperwork. He insisted on daily reports, numbers of executions, categories of victims, amounts of property seized. He wasn't a man who enjoyed blood. He was a man who enjoyed efficiency. In 1941, Göring commissioned him to implement the final solution. Heydrich convened the Wannsee Conference in January 1942, just 90 minutes of discussion among 15 bureaucrats. The infamous minutes of that meeting were edited by Heydrich himself. He removed any language that sounded emotional or vengeful. The genocide was framed as evacuation, resettlement, special treatment. He knew that euphemism allowed ordinary men to cooperate without feeling like murderers. That psychological insight, that people will do terrible things if you give them clean words, is one of his most chilling legacies. By mid-1942, Heydrich was at the peak of his power. He served as Deputy Reich Protector of Bohemia and Moravia, essentially the dictator of what is now the Czech Republic. He ruled with what he called the Iron Heart, That meant executions for black market offenses, closure of universities, deportation of Jewish families. But he also increased beer rations and pension payments for loyal workers, carrots and sticks, but the sticks were always lethal. On May 27, 1942, two Czech paratroopers trained by British intelligence attacked his car in Prague. Their grenade lodged in the rear wheel well. Heydrich made a critical error. He stopped the car, got out, and drew his pistol instead of accelerating away. The assassins had a second Sten gun. Heydrich was hit in the lower back. He survived the initial attack and seemed to improve for several days. Then infection set in. The car upholstery had fragments of horsehair and rust that contaminated the wound. He died on June 4, 1942, at the age of 38. The Nazi response was immediate and predictable. Over 1,300 Czechs were executed in retaliation, including the entire male population of the village Lidis. But the deeper consequence was institutional. Heydrich had no clear successor. His death forced Himmler to split his responsibilities among less capable men. The security apparatus remained brutal, but it lost its obsessive manager. Heydrich's story matters today for a reason that has nothing to do with morbid fascination. He proved that a single determined bureaucrat can reshape the moral landscape of an entire nation. Not with charisma, not with weapons, with paperwork, legal exemptions, and a steady voice in meeting rooms. Every democratic society has bureaucrats and police agencies and intelligence services. The question is always the same. Who watches the watchers, and what legal walls keep them contained? Heydrich's career is a case study in those walls collapsing, not in a dramatic explosion, but one quiet exemption at a time. Subscribe to War Machiner and share this if you value history that goes deeper.